Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Asher. I appreciate it. I'm definitely appreciate you having me on.
But you're telling me you have a podcast of your own.
Yeah, I started a podcast literally and right before pandemic started. So 2020, it was the new year.
Mhm.
It was called the Eight Count, and yeah, and now it's called the Champ Up Chat
Mm.
podcast. So it's gone through quite a bit of change over the past couple of years, as the whole world did, right?
Yeah. I guess how have you enjoyed podcasting?
Um, I would say it's just like anything. It has its challenges, but no, I definitely enjoy it. I especially now with my wife, where we just sit down and we talk about topics of health and wellness, and because that's what we've focused on over the last couple of years, and wanting to share our thoughts and ideas with our listeners. It's been great because it helps us. The thought is, when you teach, you learn it twice. So,
Mm.
the more we talk about it, the more we ingrain it into our own lifestyle, whether it be, just mindset or nutrition and things like that. So, yeah, I've definitely enjoyed it.
Gotcha. Awesome. A question I always like to ask every guest is, who do you say you are?
Who do I say I am? Hmm. I would say I'm a martial artist at heart. From 8 years old, literally, that's who I wanted to show up as. Not that it's always been, I've always shown up as that person, but that's who I wanted to show up as
Mm.
from that early on at 8 years old. So I would say, yeah, I'm a martial artist.
How'd you get into martial arts?
So my father was a martial artist. He was a taekwondo stylist, and
Mm.
the funny thing is, I used to watch him leave the apartment, growing up in Queens. And I was, again, like maybe 7 or 8 years old. I used to watch him leave the apartment. He would never say anything. He would just grab this brown bag, like this brown uh, duffel bag, I guess, kind of, and he would leave the apartment, and he would never say anything. And I always asked my mom, "Where is he going?" And she would say, "Oh, he's going to do his thing."
Mhm.
And I didn't know what that was. She didn't explain it, but eventually I learned that he was going off to a taekwondo school in the city, in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And yeah, I was just always curious about it. And then eventually, after nagging my mom, my mom, eventually got my dad to bring me to his dojo.
Mm.
And I, my father and I, even to this day, we don't have a close relationship. He's been uh, very disconnected from our family, even though, again, he's still alive and he still lives with my mother. But him taking me there was just a huge turning point as an 8-year old, and just watching him go from the way he was in the house, which was very disconnected and very to himself, and then to see him on the mats in the dojo and watch him, kick and punch and doing all his forms, and making the noises that martial artists make,
Mm.
and actually the smell of the place. It was a turning point in my life, and yeah, that literally hooked me from day one.
So for you, it started out, martial arts started out with Taekwondo and just continued to evolve from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, what's interesting is that that dojo didn't have a kids program, so I wasn't able to even start. But it was the point where I was like, oh, I want to do something like this eventually. So we moved from where we were in Queens, from Elmhurst, to a place called Queens Village, which is
Mm.
still in Queens, but not too far away. But it was very different neighborhoods. And when I moved to Queens Village, then eventually I was able to enroll my parents, or my mom enrolled me in a Taekwondo school,
Mm.
where in the new neighborhood that we were in. So yeah, I started. I was, I guess, maybe 9 or 10 at that time.
Gotcha. And I guess like you said, Taekwondo was really the jumping off point since that's what your dad did, and you basically followed suit from there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so again, so it's interesting because at home he was very more than reserved, I guess is the best way to put it. But
Mhm.
he was a black belt, like a third degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I just kind of looked up to him at that time as like even though at that time this was I don't know, like 40 years ago now, but Bruce Lee was just coming into my awareness,
Mm,
and I looked at Bruce Lee as like a mentor or guide, and then looking at my dad, I was like, oh, hey, so this is going to be my path, right?
right,
Yeah.
gotcha. So, I mean, with how or how would you say martial arts has evolved over the years for you? Like seeing it going to the gym, seeing it like maybe from your dad perspective, and now where like mixed martial arts is more or less mainstream.
Oh, I mean, it's unbelievable, right? To watch that growth of combat sports. I first saw the UFC back in the early 90s.
Mm,
And that was when it was, in its infancy, when it was still just, what they called no holds barred fighting. But in general, martial arts, as at first, when I first got into martial arts, it was only karate and taekwondo schools that were around in at least New York City. I don't know about the rest of the country, but
mhm,
now to see it evolve into what is mainstream now, which is Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling has always been around, but yeah, Muay Thai and BJJ, it's great to see that evolution. It reminds me of how technology is evolving, right?
mm,
How it went from, I had a Motorola pager back in the day, and now it's just, like these smartphones that can, power, that just have so much information that, and it grew within, such a short period of time. And I feel like that's what happened with martial arts. And, you see kids, like I just took my kid to a jujitsu match yesterday. Actually, my wife did. I had to go teach a class in a town not too far over, but my kid was at this jujitsu competition, and there were just tons of kids, ready to, just scrap it out on the mats, and that's a beautiful thing because I
mm.
think sport or combat sport is, not every kid is going to enjoy it, but I think it
Yeah,
it is crucial to some degree to for every kid growing up to at least know what it is and or experience it themselves.
true. I guess there's something to be said for like the confrontation of combat sports where it's just you and another person, or it's fun to have those conversations before, like you mentioned, Bruce Lee, and people look at different icons like even Chuck Norris or like the Gracie brothers, but like people that you see on the big screen and you're just like, man, I bet you like my dad could beat up your dad, or like this guy could beat up this person. But then when you I guess like people started talking about mixed martial arts and actually saying like, okay, what can this style beat this style? And like let's see what wins out.
Well, what's interesting about what you're saying there is that, yeah, it does. It always, from a general fan, it always reverts back to that conversation about which style is better, like who's got more techniques or things like that.
Mhm.
But what I've learned over the years through martial arts, like, and this is obviously something that Bruce Lee inspired in me, just knowing about him and following him as a kid, meaning reading up on his life and his philosophy. It always boils down to the individual. Styles. You know, yeah, all right, styles. They say styles make fights, but
Mhm.
the style. I believe styles don't matter. What matters is the individual. How much perseverance, how much desire, how much love and passion do they actually have for what they're doing, which will lead them to the skills that they're going to have going into the ring.
Right.
So you'll see it time and time again where in the past it was like, all right, jujitsu was beating all the striking arts, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, the skill was crucial because nobody knew what jujitsu was, and they were clueless. But now that everybody's kind of on the same page and everybody has sort of the same skills, it
Mhm.
really does matter on the mindset and the psychology of an individual going into the ring. That's what wins fights. I truly believe.
Right, right. And I guess th- I agree with you. There is something to be said with the mentality, especially because even looking at someone like Muhammad Ali, like being um I don't would you say like a wordsmith or someone that's just like so mentally sound where it's like he'd beat people before they'd get to the match and just like um what's your view on like the training that's done in like the dojos and the gyms versus like the competitions that people get to see like televised?
Oh, I mean, like you were mentioning with Ali, like his mindset game was
Mhm.
what, yeah, like you said, what beat people even before the match. Like his thing was say his one of his thoughts, if I don't want to misquote him, but he said something to the effect of, I knew I was a champion even before I became one,
Mhm.
right? Because he would always tell himself, I'm a champion, I'm a champion. And yeah, he was definitely a wordsmith, and he would use um mental the mental fight against his opponents first,
Mhm.
break them down even before they got to the ring. So to answer your question, I would I would say if your if your mindset isn't right going into training camp or going into the dojo, whatever you
Mhm.
call it, there's the fight is already lost,
Right.
in the training camp. If you're mentally and emotionally, right? Because it's all about emotions. Your thoughts lead to your feelings. So if you're walking in the dojo or the gym and saying, "Oh man, I don't know if this is gonna be a good workout today," or "I can't believe how badly I've been sucking over the past, whatever 2 or 3 weeks,"
Mhm.
that's a trickle down effect, right? You're just snowballing what you're going to be feeling in the training camp, and you're going to bring that right into competition. And and you see it time and time again, like there's all these talented fighters that are supposed to win,
Right.
but maybe their mental game isn't solid or complete, where they come into a fight and they've got all these skills, but they lose it in the ring emotionally and psychologically as well.
Mhm.
Hopefully I answered your question.
You did. It's funny when I was asking the question, I felt like I started going in two different directions. But something that's interesting, like we were talking about podcasting before, and also bring in the martial arts aspect. Like I watched a few episode of hot boxing with Mike Tyson,
Oh,
and
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
like I saw an episode with him and Shannon Briggs, and like not really having a martial arts background myself, I wasn't aware of who Shannon Briggs was and like where he came from. But like just speaking to the mentality and really um, fighting the mental fight before you fight the physical fight. It was it was good to understand like that's the saying that he says, let's go champ. It's like a way of like building himself up when he's down or you feel like you're down and out. And like whether it's like a training camp or just people going to a gym like on a regular basis, like you have to do that so many more times before you can be showcased on TV. And sometimes it seems like you get a glimpse of what goes on at the gym when you see people on TV, and like some people they don't shine under the lights, and then other people they just like they show out. But I I just thought that that was interesting, and just like you mentioning that makes sense, but it's always the application and like knowing this is what needs to happen and actually like doing the work to make it happen, because it it's not easy, especially it's like if you like growing up in taekwondo, and you know like you getting your butt kicked starting out. Like for me, I wrestled middle school and high school, and you just remember like part of you is like excited to just be there, like have an activity to do. You have like a mutual thing with your dad maybe now, and then it's like at some point there's that like competition where you're like, okay, maybe I don't want to just keep showing up and losing. Like maybe I actually want to, I'd like to win one. And then like you still get beat, and then you have to like now tell yourself it's okay, that's okay, that happened, like let's go another round, like let's go another round.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because I talk about, you know, what I used to have, or my wife and I, we used to own a gym back in New York, obviously, before pandemic started. And, you know, again, long story, pandemic um, wasn't something that the gym could handle. So
Mhm.
we permanently closed our doors. But the kids that we used to train there, you know, we had a scholarship program and things like that. But um, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought right now.
You're
But
good.
where was I going with this?
You talking about having a gym during the pandemic and training the kids, because we're coming from the conversation about mentality and being able to bounce back from loss, and just having the mindset of saying um, you win becoming a champion before you become a champion.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. So the thought, yes, we did everything in our power to ingrain into to the kids that we were training that being a champion, right?
Mhm.
Like Shannon Briggs, like he bigs himself up, like let's go, champ, let's go. Like, but being a champion is not just about like winning, right?
Mhm.
It's yeah, all right. That's the connotation that somebody will get when you say the word champion to somebody, that it's somebody who's, you know, they got the belt, you know, they're standing at the top of you know, the podium, and they've got the ring or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Um, but a champion is someone who decides, right,
Mhm.
that life is a fight, but I'm gonna accept that a challenge and never give up and persevere and exhibit and experience, you express your grit, you know, when it comes down to it. That's what a champion is. I mean, look at Muhammad Ali went through so many challenges, not just in the ring but outside of the ring as well.
Right.
But no matter what, he persevered, right? And somebody like Nelson Mandela, talk about a champion spirit, somebody who was incarcerated for, you know, I think, what was it, 30 years? I
Mhm.
believe
Yeah.
people like that, those are champions, right? And
Right.
not to say that someone who just wins a fight is not a champion, but it is. It's the lows, it's the setbacks and the obstacles, and how do you overcome them? That's what makes, you know, a champion, right? How do you keep getting up every single time? And the thought, like, it's funny because I had a kid reach out to one of our students from back in the gym,
Mhm.
and he was a jujitsu student. He was applying for, his parents reached out to us saying that they're applying for this boarding school, and their kid was writing this essay on his experiences at our gym, you know, a couple of years ago. And he said that they told us in his essay that he's writing that he used um, our moniker. It's not ours. I mean, it's something that I came across over the martial arts journey, but fall 7 times, stand up 8, right? You're going to get up one more time than every time that you fall, basically.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's not the champion or you know, for us, the champ up mentality is just saying, okay, it's not a matter of if life is going to knock me down. It's a matter of when and how am I going to dust myself off and get back in the fight.
I like that. And I feel like martial arts, a lot of time, it almost feels like I don't know if I'd call it a training ground or just a nice reminder of what it is you can kind of overcome in life, because it's like you have the playfulness to be able to interact with other people, but also like the confrontation of like, okay, like at one point or another, like you're gonna have your back up against the wall and you've got to either come out fighting or um I don't know if I'd say submit, but it's like regardless of what happens, it's like you at the end of the match you get a chance to get back up. It's not like you lose and you just lay on the mat, like they turn off the lights, the janitor closes up, you just lay there. It's like at the end of the day you get to go home, and there's something nice to just um, work on your training, do do what it is that you're there to do, and then go home, come back and do it again.
Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced that, and I've never wrestled, but wrestling is a great metaphor or for life, right? Like I use this probably way too much with our students, but sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, right?
Yeah.
All right, there's if you think it, well, I mean, who was I talking about this? But like the whole concept of being undefeated in boxing,
Mm.
I get it. It's great because you want to build this fighter up so that they can, bring in the pay-per-views and make all, bring in the money that's required to pay this fighter if
Right.
you're an undefeated fighter. But how realistic is that really?
Mm.
I mean, wrestling, jujitsu, Muay Thai, other combat sports, they don't rely on this whole being undefeated concept,
Right.
right? Which can be elusive, right? Because is there really such a thing as being undefeated? Unless, we're not going to get into how people stay undefeated, but yeah, I mean, it's a matter of humbling yourself every time you're on the mats, in the gym, in the ring, whether you're competing or not, and understanding that this is crucial, being the hammer sometimes and being the nail.
Mm. So I mean, what is it that you look forward to most now, whether it's like within martial arts or outside martial arts on a weekly basis?
For me personally, I want to know that I can still pass on and share what I've learned, and I'm still learning. I'm not going to claim to know it all. I still want to feel like I'm developing as a martial artist, but I want to know that I can do this into my 70s. That I gave that as my cutoff point where I'm like,
Mm.
okay, maybe in my 70s I'll slow down, maybe I'll take up Tai Chi or something. But
Mm.
I'm hoping yeah, I can keep training and preserving my quality of life and my health and my well-being and my especially my mental well-being through
Mm.
martial arts, but also passing that on to whoever is a student of mine. So yeah,
Gotcha.
longevity, but quality with the longevity.
Mm. I like that. I thought of well, I attended a local gym that does it's a mixed martial arts gym, and they do jujitsu, and I was wanting to learn a little bit of it, but it just seemed like maybe I might need to come back at another time. But I don't know if I already asked you this, but what is it about like the martial arts and that the longevity of it, or just that wanting to keep going back to the well, like even as you get older and as time keeps passing by? Is it mainly like the passing the knowledge on, or like just being in that space to feed your health, or like what is it about, like what is it that you get most from it and wanting to stick with the martial arts for such a long time?
Um, that's a good question. I would say that for me, it's it's my religion. right?
Mm,
I'm not a religious person. I grew up Catholic. My parents are Filipino. They
mhm,
raised me Catholic, but I've chosen my own path. And for me, what I replaced religion with is martial arts. So it's literally my everything. It builds my spirit, right?
mm,
It builds my spirit for, again, the challenges that will come up. And I'm not old, but as I age, right, I know things. I'm around older. My in-laws are older. My parents are getting older. You see the challenges that they go through, not just physically and mentally, but people around you. As you age, you start losing more people, and I want to know that I can have the spiritual fortitude, through training and through having a belief in something that has taken me off of a path that where I was heading down, a road that was going to lead me either in jail or underground, right? So
mm,
it's been my religion, for so many years, and it's given me, I like to call it the beacon light, right, on the shore when you're lost in the storm.
mhm.
And I've never been out in the storm, out at sea, but I can only imagine if you could see that beacon light on the shore, like you have hope,
Right.
right? So martial arts has always been that for me. As many times as I've lost the path and I've been lost out at sea and not knowing where to go, when I can get that glimmer of martial arts, like it's always set me back on the journey.
Mm,
And yeah, I would say that it's just, it's not about how physically skilled I am. Mentally, yes, I want to be strong, but spiritually, it gives me something to think of as a legacy.
mm. I like that. Which one of the martial arts is your favorite, or which do you
Definitely,
practice the most?
definitely Muay Thai. Muay Thai has always been my thing. I like to. I definitely love to kick,
Mm,
and Muay Thai is definitely a kicking art. So yeah. Well, it's funny because coming from Taekwondo, in
mhm,
Taekwondo, it's a kicking art as well. You learn, there's so many different kinds of kicks that you learn. But in Muay Thai, literally, there's only two kicks that
mhm.
you learn, and you gotta have to be able to do them, thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So yeah, it made kicking simple for me, I guess, is
Mm.
the best way to put it.
Like which two kicks are those?
So there's a push kick, or they call it a teep in
Mhm.
Thai, which is like in karate or taekwondo, it's like a front kick.
Gotcha.
And then there's the round kick where you use your shin to kick with, as opposed to karate or taekwondo where you're using your foot, you use your
Mm,
shin like a bat to
gotcha.
break down your opponent.
Hmm. It's funny. I guess that maybe shows how much of a non-expert that I might be, because every time that I've heard of Muay Thai, or I've thought of Muay Thai, I always picture like Anderson Silva's introduction into the UFC, where he fought Rich Franklin and he
Oh
got him
yeah,
in that clinch and just
yeah,
kneeing him to the face. And I was like, ooh,
yeah.
that's like the real wake up call. You're just like,
Well, no, that
man,
that that is definitely a huge part of Muay Thai, like the clinch game, which is
yeah,
interesting because yeah, most people don't think, when they think Muay Thai, they think elbows and
knees.
kicks, right? Yeah, and knee, yeah. But the clinch game is definitely where it that separates Muay Thai from all the striking arts, because
Mhm.
in all most striking arts, once you tie up and clinch, they break you up, like
Right,
boxing,
right.
they break you up. Taekwondo, they don't, they don't really clinch, but if you get in too close,
Mhm.
you want to disengage so you have room to kick. But yeah,
Gotcha.
no, Muay Thai says no. I want to go into the eye of the storm and
Mhm.
figure out how to manage the eye of the storm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I like that. But it's like those two kicks, the teep kick and the you said the
The
roundhouse,
round kick. Yeah,
the
round
round
kick.
kick
Yeah, they call it the
are
round kick. Yeah.
gotcha. They're mainly like the distance kicks to kind of just like let somebody know. It's like if you come close, there's a lot more of this than you might want to deal
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, that's definitely what makes Muay Thai uh, so effective, right? The different ranges, right?
Yeah,
You break somebody down from long range to take it into close range, where that could be, the end of it all, I guess.
got you. Man,
And
that's
jujitsu is great, where obviously, if we're talking about mixed martial arts, where
mhm,
you close that distance, maybe you're able to land kicks and punches and knees and elbows, and now if you're versed enough,
mhm,
take them down, and then that's where the fight ends,
yeah,
right? So, but I,
that,
I enjoy, I love all combative arts,
mhm,
but Muay Thai is definitely my base. Like I've trained wrestling, I've trained, I trained BJJ.
yeah,
Yeah, if I had to say what's my favorite, I definitely, they call it stand and bang. I like to
mhm,
stand and train.
yeah. It,
Yeah.
it's nice to see. I guess with some arts, it feels like there's a finality to it with like jujitsu, but it's I guess it all depends on maybe who you're facing and like the quality of your opponent. Because if you can make them submit, I'm sure if you punch somebody enough times or if you kick somebody enough times and they're like, okay, I'm done, it's like that's it, no more. But like if somebody's maybe got a granite chin or just like a hard head, they might they might do more damage to you than you might want.
And yeah, and that's the beauty of mixed martial arts, where you have a few more ranges to work on, as opposed to just Muay Thai, where you're just on your feet. Where I call it, humanely ending the fight, right? Where you
Mm,
can take somebody down and say, okay, I've got you. What are you going to do now, right?
right, right,
Yeah, are you going to let me, break your arm, or are you going to say, okay, you win until the next time?
right. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
So like how can people get in touch with you? Are you is the gym still closed down or how are you able to still practice?
so interestingly enough, just recently, after literally 2 years of not teaching, a friend of mine in the sport, he actually was a really well-known UFC referee for a while.
Mm,
He brought me into a local UFC gym because they lost their Muay Thai instructor. And he asked, just out of the blue, he kind of asked me what I was doing. And I was like, well, I'm just, I'm building this, online coaching program with my wife, where we teach health and wellness and things like that, but I'm not teaching martial arts. And he asked me if I wanted to teach, come in and take over this Muay Thai program. So now I'm teaching out of a UFC gym. I'm building Crom Muay Thai back up.
mm,
And yeah, so I'm teaching kids and I'm teaching the adults again. And it's been amazing to reconnect again with what has, you know, been my religion for quite some time. So
mm,
yeah, so I'm doing that out of here in Riverdale. Well, I live in Sparta, but
mhm.
in Riverdale, New Jersey.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. And one more question for you from the question I asked you at the start. Are you still who you said you were?
Absolutely. Till the day that I'm no longer kicking and screaming.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Asher. I appreciate it.